I desperately need to tell you about this game. Playable Mockup is a short roguelike horror deck builder featuring an unusual presentation, unnerving atmosphere, and a lot of replayability if you click with it. If the name didn't already give it away, it draws some clear inspirations from PT, Hideo Kojima's playable teaser from 2014. Like PT, Playable Mockup features a looping hallway, an eerie soundscape, and game mechanics involving photos. However, the similarities end there, and despite the matching name and setting, Playable Mockup is not some PT knockoff. It's a complete game in its own right with complex mechanics and its own flavor of horror. But the reason I'm so desperate to tell you about this game is because I can't find anyone else to talk to about it. It seems to have completely missed the Western market. No one knows about it. No one's playing it, no one's buying it, no one's recording it, nothing. I can't find anyone outside of Japan talking about this wonderful game, and I don't know Japanese. So in this review, we're going to talk about Playable Mockup and how it weaves deck building and horror together to create this stimulating, spooky gameplay, but also I'm honestly just happy to have an outlet to talk about this cool as hell game. To start, the game just drops you straight into the gameplay, so I guess I will too. Every run in Playable Mockup starts in the gallery, which has a bunch of confusing stuff in it and a niche coat of dubious authenticity. We'll talk about the objects in this room later, but for now just take note of this clock. The goal of the game is to get from noon, depicted here as 000 PM, to midnight. To do this, you exit the gallery and traverse an infinitely looping hallway within which you will find a random assortment of objects and framed images. These are called photo subjects, and they do all sorts of stuff like advancing time or providing more film for your camera. Importantly, these effects don't immediately kick in but are instead activated from the gallery, the room we started in earlier. You add these photo subjects to your gallery by taking a photo of them, but your camera has a limited amount of film. When you run out of film, you're immediately forced out of the hallway and teleported back into the gallery where you can look over the photos you've taken. Once in the gallery, your camera will recover some film. Maybe that's what Nietzsche was talking about. Anyways, 4 of the photos you've taken are randomly chosen and showcased in the gallery. Taking a photo of these showcase images will activate them, applying their effects to your next hallway run. But in order to do this, there's another resource you need: electricity. Every time you return to the gallery, you're given 3 electricity represented by these light bulbs here, and you can use these to activate 3 showcase photos. So to recap, you go into the hallways to take photos of photo subjects. When you run out of film, you return to the gallery and spend electricity to activate those photos. The deck building fans among you have probably already identified some commonalities here. While Playable Mockup is an unusual presentation for a deck builder, the core concepts should be familiar. The gallery is your deck of cards, showcase photos are the cards you've drawn, and activating a photo is akin to playing a card. When you play a card, it will affect 5 main stats: time, showcase, film, electricity, and execution. Electricity we just went over. This is the resource used to activate a photo, so further increasing this stat allows you to activate more photos. Useful alongside electricity is the showcase stat. Showcase determines how many photos are displayed in the gallery. Increasing your showcase stat is like drawing more cards during your turn. Next is the film stat. It increases the amount of film you have in your camera. The more film you have, the more photo subjects you can capture in the hallway. Simple, right? Also quite simple is time. This stat will advance the clock. Every time you return to the gallery, the clock resets to 0. Remember, the goal is to get from noon to midnight, but the other benefit of advancing time is that the closer you get to midnight, the more powerful the photo subjects will be. But there's also risk. Getting closer to midnight will also expose you to threatening photo subjects. These are enemies that will spawn in and apply some debuff to you, like reducing the amount of electricity you have, and they persist between runs until you remove them. This is where the last stat comes in: execution. You can remove a photo subject from your hallways by taking a photo of it, but you can only do this if your execution stat is equal or higher than theirs. All of these photos persist between runs and are drawn at random when you return to the gallery. As you progress in the game, you'll be doing a deck building balancing act that should feel familiar to those of you who have played the genre. Maybe you stack film first to grow your deck. Maybe you keep your deck lean to control the RNG. Maybe you go for execution to get rid of those pesky threatening photo subjects. Many photos also have additional effects that are more complicated. One that will come up often is incineration. Some photos incinerate themselves or another photo when activated, thereby permanently removing them from the gallery. Another special photo subject, and actually one of the most important ones in the game, is his painting of a key. This one is unusual in that it activates immediately upon photographing it, unlike the other photo subjects which can only be activated in the gallery. Taking a photo of the key opens a door at the end of the hallway, and walking through this door leads to another nearly identical hallway filled with a new set of photo subjects. This is the infinite part of the looping hallway. Additionally, entering a hallway in this manner advances the clock by 30 minutes. So hopefully now you have an idea of the core gameplay loop. You wander the hallways taking photos until you run out of film, gathering progressively stronger photos until you're able to stack a deck that can get you to midnight. But this is a horror game after all, and as such you're never far from danger and death. Let's talk about the witch. The witch is Playable Mockup's main antagonist, and she is slowly approaching throughout your entire session. If she reaches you, it's instant death, the game ends, and your gallery is reset. This is the only true loss condition in the game, but there's no physical model or indication when exactly it's going to happen. It just sort of eventually happens, or it happens when you hit certain game conditions that aren't always transparent. We'll get into that in a bit, but I want to pause here because the witch is a really important part of the ambiance of Playable Mockup, and it's one of the most crucial elements in how it succeeds as a horror title despite being an otherwise bare-bones package. You see, Playable Mockup relies entirely on its sounds, setting, and props to scare you. The game has no plot and no characters, and it features minimal animations to the point that some of your enemies are actually just 2D images panning across the screen. I actually love this aesthetic of these surreal 2D monsters invading 3D space, but these elements can only take a player so far into discomfort before they start to lose their impact. And this is especially true in a game centered around repetition like Playable Mockup. I mean, take in this atmosphere for a moment. It does well to create an uneasy feeling, but it's not exactly the scariest or the creepiest horror set, and it's repeated with just slight variations every time. This repetition is kind of interesting. If you played narrative horror titles before, you've probably experienced a moment like this. You're stuck on a puzzle or you're missing the key to a door, so you're forced to wander around, backtracking through areas, trying to figure out how to progress. Then at some point you realize, oh, nothing scary has happened in a while. And the spell is shattered because you know you're safe until you get to the next bit of content behind the locked door. It's a safe zone, hard-coded into the game as a result of the limitations in its design. In this game, the witch is inevitable. She's always a threat. It removes that safe zone, and as a result, the repetition doesn't harm the atmosphere. And the witch always appears when you least expect it, always scaring the bejesus out of me. They achieve this in a few simple ways. For one, it's just a straight up jump scare. Once some game conditions are met, she just sort of suddenly appears on your screen. A simple creepy 2D image of a woman. The clever thing though is that it's typically timed such that it happens immediately after taking a photo. This means 1, you're already distracted because you're looking through your viewfinder, deep in thought about how this next photo will fit into your deck's composition, and 2, the cameras act as a smokescreen that the devs have cleverly used to hide the witch behind. The result is one terrifying jump scare that manages to stay surprising and fresh for hours on end. Getting back to the mechanics, I should mention that to outrun the witch, it's not enough to just sprint through the hallways and build your deck quickly. There's also your sanity stat to look out for. When your sanity drops below 25, the witch begins to close in on you much more quickly, and threatening photo subjects will also appear more frequently. Many photos decrease your sanity, so you can't just use them haphazardly. Additionally, every photo you take reduces your sanity by 1. Your sanity is displayed in the gallery here labeled SAN, and it starts at 100. Because the witch speeds up as your sanity drops, it never feels unfair when she catches you. When it happened, I always knew it was my fault for being too slow and not managing my sanity properly. But the fact that your sanity level is only visible in the gallery, and the fact that the witch is always approaching at some speed regardless of your sanity, helps keep the game feeling dangerous at all times. This lack of transparency and unpredictability of the witch's approach is really effective at keeping you on the edge. You'll notice in a lot of these clips I'm just sprinting through, but that's not some neon white level efficiency. No, I'm legitimately just scared and desperately trying to avoid the witch. To me, Playable Mockup is great because it's like someone took the most tense part of horror games, the part where you have to sneak past or outrun the bad guy, and they made a game that was just that feeling. To wrap up the gameplay mechanics, there's one last tool you can use to outrun the witch and reach midnight, and that's the emotion switchboard. This allows you to choose your hallway's emotion. The hallway's emotion tailors the photo subjects towards specific stats. By default, your hallway's emotion is Nihility, but there are 5 others to choose from, each boosting 1 stat. For example, in the Despair hallway, all of the photo subjects provide upgraded time bonuses. However, you can only access these hallways once your sanity decreases, and these hallways also feature more threatening photo subjects. This display in your gallery, the Corridor Traversal Record, helps keep track of every emotion you visited and the time you visited there. The Roman numerals indicate every hour you've managed to reach in that emotion. The hallways have a finite number of photo subjects per time slot, so this helps you avoid revisiting one that you've already gone through and photographed. And that's it for the training mode. What we've covered up to now is actually the game's tutorial, and now we're going to get into the real game. But in my defense, would you have stuck around if I told you it takes 1500 words to get through the tutorial of a game no one's ever heard of? Anyways, the true goal of this game is not just to reach midnight, it's to solve a murder. The game describes the protagonist as some sort of detective looking into someone's death by traversing a dead soul corridor created from a ghost photo. That's mostly gibberish, so here's what that actually means gameplay wise. In the investigation mode, you'll see 6 portraits and their names. One of these is the victim and one is the culprit. Each person is associated with a specific emotion. Remember those? You need to identify the victim and then get to midnight in the hallway associated with their emotion. There you will find their soul. Photograph their soul and you win. There are a few ways to figure out who the victim is. First, the investigation mode features a new photo subject that reveals one letter from either the victim's name or the culprit's name. Additionally, some hallways will now have spells. These are words written on the walls, and photographing them also reveals a letter and a name. These letters are displayed on this monitor in the gallery and are also visible under these images in the hallway. So this will at least help you eliminate 4 of the 6 portraits. You can also narrow your choices by identifying more details about the victim. Every portrait will appear along the walls of the hallway matching their emotion. However, the victim's portrait stops appearing after the hour of their death. You'll know the hour of death by seeing what time a body bag appears in the hallway. So if I know the victim died at 5 p.m. and Thomas Perez's portrait stopped showing up in his hallway after 5 p.m., then I know he's the victim. Now I can just focus on getting to midnight in that hallway to end the game. But what about the culprit? Figuring out the culprit is beneficial because doing so resets the witch, delaying her from killing you. Choose the culprit incorrectly though, and the witch will move rapidly and is essentially a death sentence. One of the most important tools in this mode is the portraits themselves. Looking at the portraits through your camera, you'll see some of the faces are blacked out. The detective handbook in your main menu will help you interpret this information. Here you'll learn about the characteristics of the victim and culprit depending on the emotion associated with the victim. For example, a victim whose emotion is fear will have the culprit's face blacked out. The different emotions also feature special characteristics that will help you narrow down your suspects or sometimes make it a lot harder. Using the portraits and the detective handbook effectively can help you quickly identify the victim and win. This investigation mode is a critical component to Playable Mockup's identity as a roguelike, because it adds so much freshness, variety, and replayability by giving you goals that are generated behind randomized factors. It forces you to engage with the hallway emotions, resulting in different deck compositions, different threatening photo subjects, and as a result, different experiences every time. Trying to stick to a build you know now comes at the risk of deviating from the primary goal of identifying the victim. There's also a harder difficulty called Advanced Investigation Mode, which censors the names of the portraits, requiring you to explore more and be more efficient with your deck. And if that's not enough, you can remove up to 30 random photo subjects from your run to create even more of a challenge. For such a compact game, both literally in its setting and also in its game design, Playable Mockup is surprisingly rich in gameplay. If you enjoy horror games or deck builders, I hope I've convinced you to pick this one up. It's only $5 on Steam. But I do have one caveat. This game features some terrible localization. Playable Mockup was developed by Japanese indie studio 727 Not Hound, and the English translation is rough. The game actually has explanations of its gameplay mechanics written everywhere, but there were multiple points where the description of something was largely incomprehensible until I'd already figured it out myself. I would regularly come back to an explanatory note that the game had revealed to me earlier and think, oh, that's what it was trying to say. That's part of the reason why I was so thorough in this review. I didn't want you to run into these game mechanics and have no idea what to do, especially since there seems to be no English-speaking community, wiki, guide, or even a full playthrough for you to turn to for help if you got stuck. It took me about 4 hours to fully grasp all of the concepts in this game on my own, so I hope I've cut some of that short for you. If you play this one, please let me know in the comments. I'm so eager to hear what you think about it, and if you notice anything I've missed, do let me know. One last thing. Playable Mockup is in fact what it says it is on the package. A mockup. A mockup for another game called Photogenic Minds Identity, for which I am impatiently waiting for an English patch. Rest assured, you'll hear from me again when that drops. Until then, I hope to see you in the next review. Thanks.